switch gears because we've been talking a lot about specifics and details and things that we can kind of touch and feel and cleansing and all of that. And it's been necessary. I think it's been a really nice laying the groundwork for health, at least from my point of view, the physical part of it mostly. But I just, in thinking about where I wanted to go next, I just kind of gave it to source. Let's say I just kind of waited for the download. And just a couple of days after our last call, I said, oh, eating psychology. We got to start talking about that. And so I have a whole lecture in my head that I saw myself giving to a crowd. And this was when I was cleansing and I was probably laying awake at night. But this is where my formal certification is in with Mark David and this Institute for the Psychology of Eating. And it was a 5 or 6 month course. I went to Boulder, Colorado for the graduation, and I was very much into it. And so the reason I did that was I had been just, informally coaching friends and family. And yeah, at that point, I'd just been probably friends and family. And I just noticed that, because I first started with myself, getting myself well in all aspects. And so when you start doing that and you start talking about what you're doing and people notice differences in this, that, and the other thing, they start to ask you questions. And so people started coming to me, family and friends, mostly friends. Family was still like, no, we know who you are. and we know you're still weird. And so we don't know about you yet. So I had to prove myself for a couple decades, but so what I noticed was you can kind of tell people what you know or what you think, give some science and even help them to maybe build a program, what that they should eat and what they should do, given the parameters, and they love it, but they don't do it. You don't do it. People just don't do it. And I couldn't figure this out for a long time. And so when this course came, I thought, oh my goodness, this is it. This is the who of the eater. So what the psychology of eating does is it looks at the person, it's the who. I can tell you what, I can tell you when, I can tell you how, and I can tell you why. But only you can say who. And so what we studied was looking at the person and how that's all integral to results, integral to health. So there's a whole psychology aspect of eating, who you are as the eater. And until that is dealt with and identified, the rest doesn't go very far. You can look on the internet, all kinds of stuff. If you really want to learn information, yeah, it's hard to pick through that. And I think I'm a curator. And so I think that's where people like me have value. But at the same time, where the uniqueness comes in the experience is you figuring out who you are and where stuff's coming from. And so let me start from the beginning. With that said, the story starts when we're born. And when we're born, so here's the thing. First of all, let me just address this. We're all emotional eaters. Every single one of us is an emotional eater. People say, well, I'm an emotional eater. Good, you should be. That means you're normal. And here's why that's normal, is because when you were born, you are hardwired. We're all hardwired to bond with our caregivers, especially our mothers, right? And so when we are bonding with how do we bond with our mothers? You're breastfeeding. And you're breastfeeding a lot. I didn't breastfeed my son. I did a huge mistake, and I wasn't breastfed. But even if with a bottle, you still have the eye contact. You still have the bonding there. You're still, the baby's close to you. But excuse me, breastfeeding is the ultimate. Oxytocin comes through the breast milk. So not only do you have the eye to eye contact, the skin to skin that's supposed to be, the baby's getting oxytocin. The baby's getting all kinds of stuff from breast milk. And that translates to the baby of love, security, warm fuzzies, all these things. A baby cries, bring the baby to the breastfeed. Babies, especially if they're hungry, they're going to quiet down. But sometimes it's even used as a pacifier type, I don't know. I didn't breastfeed, but I'm guessing. And from what I've seen. So of course it's an emotional experience for a baby. When does it go away? So babies equate nourishment, food with love, value, attachment, all of these good, warm, fuzzy feelings. Then let's take it farther. So we have a toddler who's screaming in the aisle of the grocery store, and mama's embarrassed and has shame or whatever, and this is just a made up possible experience. Give the kid a lollipop. Shh. Give the kid a lollipop. Or the kids are coming, they have feelings during the day. They this and that and the other thing. Have a cookie. All right. So we take that experience is taken of a pure experience, and I think normal and healthy, let's say healthy, and it gets skewed almost every time because food is used as a tool, another type of tool. Then we have compounding issues. So now we have an adult who has a lot of what we have voids in our life. How do we learn to cope with these feelings? We don't a lot of times. And so we have a void. And so we as young adults, no wonder we're going to turn to the cookie. No wonder we're going to return to the coffee, the ice cream, the pizza, that whatever it is that's going to say, oh yeah, that makes me feel so much better. Partly we feel so much better because we just shoved it down so that you didn't have to feel it. And until you take away food altogether, just water, you will not fully understand I think it's impossible, in my opinion. You will not fully understand where your triggers and all of your feelings that are going to come up until you take away that thing. And we eat every day, most of us, almost, unless we're fasting. So it's like a cigarette smoker. Yeah, it's easy to say to take away the cigarettes, and then you know what it does to you. But how do you take away food regularly and figure out what your relationship with food is until you take it away? So with the amount of fasting that I've done, sometimes it's just fasting in the sense that I'm doing a certain shake, but you're taking away food groups, you're taking away, let's say, a caloric intake. You are going to feel that. And that is when you start to feel the emotions coming up, and they will be totally unrelated. They'll feel totally unrelated. But what you've learned about yourself is when you reach for the cabinet. I remember doing a fast, and I would find myself reaching for the food cabinet. I'd be maybe in the kitchen for another reason, or I'd be going there and I'd be like, wait a minute, I'm fasting. Wait, what am I doing? And then I'd say, okay, what's the feeling? Identify the feeling. What's the feeling that I have right now? And try to go into that and feel that feeling and then experience it and get it out. So the psychology of eating is just that. It's what is the psychology around your habits? What is the psychology around the choices of food that you have? The relationship you have with your digestive system. It's a fascinating topic. And when I've worked with some clients, and it almost always comes up, especially with women. I work with mostly women though, but you can really get through some stuff when you start to identify what some of those barriers and emotions are. It makes total sense when you start to look back on the culture of your family and you as an individual in that family, because you can have, I have two sisters, and we're all females, and we're all within, we're born 2 years and 4 months apart, all of us. So not too much time in between. And we all had pretty much the same environment, but we all reacted differently. So, but if you look at your family unit, that's a tell. And also, who were you in that family unit? And when you start looking back on if food related stuff, let's say, and otherwise, I wanted to use the word governor. The food can be a governor for the feelings that are coming up, right? Oh, it's getting nighttime. I'm alone. I need my whatever it is,
Right.
Yep, there's a void there. And until you start to identify what is the feeling that you're looking for, because, someone I think on an earlier call said happiness was something, I don't remember, but, food was happiness. Well, food, happiness. I mean, happiness, we should have that all the time. Not all the time. Let me just rephrase that. We should have that on our own. That's what I wanted to say. So, and just recognizing that, and it's not that you have to get rid of all these things. It's not that. It's just the first step is recognizing. There was a point in my life, it was a number of years ago, not within a decade, but, it was, not too long ago. And as I was, after I took the course, actually, and I was just really reflecting on a lot of stuff, I was single, and I still am. And I realized that food's my primary partner right now. And I'm okay with that. I was totally okay with that. And I wasn't overeating, but I was putting a lot of attention to it. I was doing a lot of stuff for my health. And I recognized that there was a void, and that I was filling that. I was trying to do and I do in a really healthy way, upgrading cheesecakes and all that stuff. That's what I got good at, but why was I doing that? There was a reason why I was doing that. So like a person who uses exercise to fill their void, the exercise itself, is not bad. You can use it as a tool to reach a goal, or at least knowing that maybe you're doing it for this reason, but you're still getting benefits from it. It's not a black and white thing. There's a vested interest in us eating breakfast cereals, let's say, because we're going to eat more. There's food scientists. There's scientists that work on how to get a food as palatable as possible, so that addictive as possible in your mouth. The mouth feel is a science. There's a certain texture, there's a certain fat to sugar ratio, and that's why you can't stop eating them. And so that is a food science. You don't find that in nature. The farther you get away from that stuff, that junk food, or just the stuff that's really not food, it's food-like products, the less that tricks you and fools you. You will start to, you have a thing of grapes, and you will start to taste the difference between every single one of those grapes. It's amazing. Once your palate gets cleaned out and reset, let's say, and that's what cleansing and fasts can do too. Yeah, I mean, that's, I remember texting you saying, I just want a damn potato chip.
Yeah.
When I'm fasting, when I'm fasting, I think about that stuff. I just want something heavy, because your mind is talking to your body saying you're hungry, you need food. And you're like, no, I don't. I actually don't. And so I talk to myself, so it's like potato chips and things like that. But once then I started refeeding, then I'm not hungry. So I'm not thinking about that stuff. But it's interesting to walk around in the world and see people, their shopping carts and what they eat. And, I try not to look at people's carts, because, I don't want people to notice I'm doing that. And I don't have a reason to do that. But I notice that people look at my cart. And I also notice that when I'm at work and stuff, and, people want to know what I'm eating, and it's annoying. And so I just go to my car a lot of times, because I don't want to answer the questions. They're really interested in what I'm eating. And so when you say, it's a certain presence that you have, just because I'm lean, I'm an older woman, and I'm lean, like middle-aged maybe, and I look kind of fit, and so people are just naturally, when you eat, when they look down, they want to know, what is she eating? What's the answer? It's like, and plus I don't want people to think that, it's all about what I choose either. So, it's such an interesting, subject when you start to really look into it. So, and, and then you don't want to have to be in this mode of constantly trying to figure every one of your steps out either. Every choice that you make, you don't want to make it a part-time job. You want to have balance. But I think whenever you learn a new subject or topic that you're interested in or learning a new skill, at first you're going to be focused on it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's like when bodybuilders first start bodybuilding, and so they're going to write down all of their sets they're going to do. They're going to write down all their macros, how many calories they need until they get it, until they, like, I can look at a plate of food and I can tell you how many macros are on that plate. I've done it so long. I know how much protein, how much carbs, and how much fat approximately is on that plate. I don't need to do the calculations anymore. So it's like the psychology of things too. Like and just what your body needs intuitively, you just start to know. It's like, oh, I need protein today. And it's not about a craving. It's just, oh, that's what I need right now. So once you're not so overloaded and overstimulated with the junk food today, then you can start listening to your body. You start detoxing all of that stuff out, and you start to know, yeah, I need this, and this is what my body is calling for. And it doesn't take a book. It doesn't take someone to tell you. And so this is what we have to learn, but you're not going to learn it unless you can't. To stop smoking, you have to stop buying the cigarettes, right? You have to stop smoking. So in order to get your taste buds back, if you're a smoker, you have to stop inhaling the smoke. And so they have to start somewhere, a place that's comfortable for you. And everybody's so different. I had a client who was a binger. And with the psychology of eating, we didn't look at not food addictions. We didn't look at we didn't deal with anorexia, bulimia, those kinds of things. We looked at disordered eating patterns for sure, but not the kind of clinical stuff. So I had a client that was, she was definitely binging, and she was admitting it. And what I did with her is I made it okay. And because I knew it was coming from a place that was necessary. And I didn't put any kind of shame on her, and we kind of put it aside for a moment, a long time actually. And I didn't take it away from her, and she was really surprised and almost to tears. And I said, no, this is what we're going to do. I said, what we're going to do is I'm going to cry is we're going to upgrade the binge. We're going to upgrade it. She was, hold on a second. I can't believe I'm crying. She became a really good friend of mine. But anyway, I said, we're going to upgrade the binge. And I can't feel. And what I'm going to do is, so she would tell me, she said I would, she would starve herself all day because she thought that was the right thing to do. She wasn't going to eat. And so she would be at work all day long, and she would maybe I think she maybe had a little bit of junk here and there. And then she would, on the way home from work, she would go to the grocery store, not every day, but she'd go to the grocery store, and she was starving. And because she had years of her own trauma and her own stuff that she didn't work through, she was trying to shove that down. And she had a pretty hard job and stressful. And so she was in a place where she needed her bag of potato chips and ice cream that she bought. And so that was her go-to. And so I said, look, what I want you to do is I want you to pick a better bag of chips and a better ice cream. And so we talked about all the better options. And at the time, what was just coming out was the coconut oil potato chips and the avocado oil. And I said, I just want you to try those. They're not going to be exactly the same, but I want you to try them. So we talked about nutrition. We talked about, that was definitely along the way. But I said, all right, we're going to keep that in place. Do your thing, girl. And she found a few options of ice cream that was better and some chips that were better. And so in the meantime, she really did want to add something during the day because she was hungry. And so I taught her to make smoothies, and she hated vegetables. And so I started with green zucchini. Can't really taste that, it doesn't have a lot of seeds in it. So I taught her to make a smoothie with a zucchini and some kind of protein powders. I think she was vegetarian at the time, maybe. And so anyway, we just made a smoothie, and I told her, you make it the night before if you have to, or just put it in the blender, and then you put the blender in the refrigerator. If you're telling me you don't have time, I will figure out a hack so you have time. You put the whole blender in the refrigerator. All you got to do is blend it up. You put it in the sink. You fill it with water. You don't have to clean it. So somehow we did it. So she took her smoothie. And that way she wasn't starving by the time she got out of work. And so it slowly got to the point where I had her making dinners at home. And she would do the grocery store binge every once in a while. And, but as she got in a really good clip, and I worked with this girl for about a year. And, by the, towards the end of that, you know, she was so vulnerable. She was so open and honest. And it was just a beautiful relationship that we had. And I was a new coach, then. And so new eating psychology coach anyway. And so she came to me one time, and it had been about a month. Oh, and she was very overweight, by the way. She was obese. She was a beautiful girl, but she had just too much weight on her, and she wanted to release the weight. I don't say lose weight, by the way, because you'll find it. You want to release it. So she wanted to release weight, and she was. And I also, oh, by the way, so she didn't move her body, and so we got her walking, and she loved animals. And I said, you got to get out and do something on the weekends. And she didn't have a boyfriend. She didn't have a relationship. She was wanting one. I said, go volunteer at the Humane Society or find a place. She's, oh, there's a place nearby. But you go and volunteer, and I want you to. And so we did that too. So there was a whole picture that we looked at. So here's the red ribbon on the whole thing. So she came to me, and it had been about at least a month since she had binged. And she said, Terry, I got to tell you, I did it again. I went to the store, and I got the J's. J's was her thing. And I was surprised. And I was like, oh, okay, you got the J's. All right, okay. And she said, I brought it home. I don't remember if she got the ice cream. I don't recall. And it tasted like crap. And I said, really? She said, yeah, I couldn't even finish the bag. I'm like, interesting.
Wow.
What I did with her was what I just told you, is I know that when you get off the junk food, when you get off the science of the food, and you get off the chemicals, and you go back to it, you won't want it anymore.
Right.
So it was a long multi-step process of dealing with her from all kinds of different angles to get her to a place where she felt she was in control. And she didn't feel like anyone, because I wasn't going to tell her what to do anyway. That's not what I'm there for. But nobody was, but from her perspective, when you sit down with a coach, you might think, what do they want me to do? They're going to tell me to do, take this away, don't take this away. I wasn't wanting to do that. And I wasn't going to do that. And so nothing was taken away. She had safety pretty much throughout. She had to deal with her own emotions. So that story, I like to tell that story. I've only told that a few times, but that encapsulates a lot of what eating psychology is, and a lot of what we can kind of hack in our own lives. And we can play with ourselves, our minds, what our vulnerabilities, our little children inside of us, and say, what is it that I'm wanting, and how can I make this outcome to where I'm getting what I want? Because we're all not getting what we want. We probably getting, I believe we get who we are. We can want a whole lot of things, but you have to rise to the place where you're able to receive. That's pretty much the gist of eating psychology. And that was the best story I can give. I've had other stories. I'll just say something really quick. I had one story where, working with a client, totally different client, where she had issues with, at least she thought she did, with candida. And I know I mentioned in the past how every dis-ease, there's an emotion attached to it, whether it started with with an emotion or not. I think there's an emotion attached to it. And she was able to hone down that her candida was connected to her mother, a certain aspect of her mother, and that it was actually a representation of her relationship with her mother. And so we worked on her relationship with her mother. I had her write her mother a letter and send it to the house that her mother no longer lived at. I think it was abandoned or something. And she didn't necessarily want to send it. And I said, no, you have to send it. I mean, you really should send it. You don't have to, but you really should send it. And so that's part of the exercise that we did. So has anyone ever heard of German new medicine yet? If not, you will.
Heard the phrase,
Okay. German new medicine, if I had two brains and two 24 hours periods in a day, I would study it. It just basically is the concept that I just mentioned, that if every dis-ease in our body is an emotion. And yeah. And so what they do though is the gentleman, the German man who actually invented this through his research, this came about. He could 100% accurately over time, show that those who have these emotions are going to get this ailment. So my thing is, I'm wondering, it's got to go both ways. Because let's say you get in an accident, you get in a car accident. Okay, let's say my neck. Let's do a real example. I got in a car accident when I was 20 something, and I had some damage in my neck. Do have some damage, and there's emotions in there. Now that doesn't mean that all growing up, in my first 22 years, there wasn't emotions in my neck. But with all the amount of energy work and all the stuff that I've done, I'm pretty sure that there's emotions related to my accident, or it's a depository for it. So I think that it can go both ways. Does an emotion cause disease? Absolutely. Because if you don't release that, then it gets stuck somewhere. And also I think that you can have an accident or have a trauma, let's say a physical trauma, and then emotions get attached to that. And that has a hard time healing because now you have emotions attached to that. Most green supplements begin with land plants. Phytofuel begins somewhere very different. We naturally compare phytoplankton to leafy greens because they are both green, but that is where many of the similarities end. Phytoplankton are microscopic marine plants that turn sunlight into nutrition with remarkable efficiency. They naturally produce proteins, essential fatty acids, pigments, minerals, and other compounds that help them survive in demanding marine environments. Phytofuel combines two complementary marine species, including tetrasod, a patented strain of Tetraselmis chewi cultivated to naturally develop very high SOD or superoxide dismutase activity. The result is a whole food marine concentrate designed to provide broad nutritional and antioxidant support without artificial colors or flavors. Look beyond ordinary greens and discover what marine nutrition has to offer. Learn more at marinesuperfood.store. And I would take it a step further because I like that. And I would say, and the emotion, because I always like to ask why, the emotion that's driving that, or what is it? I think it's going to always come down to some kind of, you need something, you need love, or you're afraid of something. And so where's that coming from? There's a void, there's something that you're trying to get because you don't already have it. Because I think that once we become fully ourselves, some people might say enlightened or whatever word you want to put on that, but we're fully into our souls, ourselves, we're not going to need any of those things. Not that we're not going to have emotions, but we're not going to be grabbing for that reason. We're all brilliant. Every one of us is brilliant.
Yeah.
And that's, we sit down with one another eye to eye, and we really get to the stories, and we really get them in a place where, or each other is in a place where we don't have fear, and we can just be ourselves and talk and all that. And we realize that we see the brilliance in the other person. And, it's that fear is such a, damn, it makes us be who we're not. It makes us not be able to be who we are. And so maybe we need to hang on to these ideas of ourselves, these identities that we've been given. And it's hard to let go of that because we don't know what's on the other side. And that's scary. Well, who would I be?
Very scary.
When I walk out the door, I'm used to just, being a certain way. And what if that changes? Then what? Right. And that's the same with food. It's when we use that as a identifying marker, like for instance, I was raw vegan for 2 years, and I was around a lot of raw vegans, and to take that on as an identity and realize, let's say later, you don't want to be a raw vegan anymore. Then what? Then you got this whole thing, group of friends that might, chastise you, or you might lose, or, then you have to, maybe you were wrong if you were too dogmatic, and so, it just becomes food, and our way of eating can become our identity too.
Well, it sounds like part of what you offered your client was she didn't have to stop being who she was. And she was binging for good reasons.
Yeah, she was. Mm-hmm.
And you just accepted that instead of saying, no, you shouldn't be doing that. You just accepted it. And it's like in that kind of atmosphere, then she could slowly open up to, well, what else might I want? And how can I take care of myself in different ways that'll make me happier and healthier and even more. But you didn't make her do any shaming or anything like that.
The phrase you used is, I mean, it's just beautiful, Terry. It's just like, we're all brilliant and we can learn to see the brilliance in others. It's just like, that's a perfect encapsulation of the dialogue process we talk about.
Mm.
How do you learn to set aside the things that keep you from seeing the brilliance in other people?
Yeah.
So I'm going to steal that.
But yeah, it's not making someone wrong, because you know it. And I will say that with her, she ended up having a relationship towards the end there. And last I heard, she was still with him. I haven't heard from her in about a year. But I had heard from her maybe 2 years after that, and she was still with him. And so I don't know about anything else, you know, was going on and how she had, you know, got on with it. But yeah, so you know, I think too, with what I do with the psychology of eating, and when I approach coaching from this angle, is that it can be a doorway into all kinds of other areas of their life. And Mark David does say it. He says, the way you do food is the way you do life. And I agree. And I stole that from him. He says that over and over. So if you look at the way you do food, oftentimes, if not 100% of the time, that is how you do life. And if you sit down after dinner with somebody, watch how they do food. You'll know a lot more about them. With me, everything's very organized. Everything's super organized, and you know, it's a certain, I plan everything out. That's how I do life, you know? And so if you can delve into that area and make it safe for somebody, let's say somebody's coming to the table with all kinds of issues, and you don't necessarily let them know that their food is going, the way they do food is the way they do life. So you start with that, and you help give them aware and help them to become more aware of how they're doing food. It's gonna go in all kinds of rabbit holes. That's going to heal other parts of their life.